Welcome to another episode of Mike's Money Picks. Today on the podcast, we are going to be breaking down the Friday, December 20th slate of college football DFS. That is right, the college football playoff has finally arrived. In what I've been deeming as the most anticipated college football season of all time, we have finally reached the pinnacle. We have finally reached the college football playoff, and the first game of the college football playoff will be Friday night at 8 o'clock in South Bend, Indiana, as Notre Dame takes on the Indiana Hoosiers. Now, before that, though, we've also got a full day of college football lined up. We've got the Cure Bowl between Ohio and Jacksonville State. We've got the Gasparilla Bowl between Tulane and Florida. So what we're going to do here is we're going to break down all three games for this Friday slate and tell you what you can expect from each game, as well as who to play in or not to play in your DFS lineups for each game as well. If you are playing, player props on underdog, drafts on underdog, or, anything else like that, all of this can apply as well, because we're really going to try to give you a full breakdown of what you can expect these teams to try to do in each game. Now, as I said, I've been calling this the most anticipated college football season of all time. It's also been our biggest college football season of all time in terms of the audience we have reached and just the amount of viewers that we've had on these videos all season long. So if you have not already, make sure you subscribe to the channel. That way you can be with us for the rest of the college football season, in addition to coming back next year, and all of our college basketball DFS content is going to be coming out on a weekly basis as well. But anyway, we got three games to break down. This is a full Friday slate. I'm really looking forward to it. We got plenty of thoughts on these three games to get to. So let's go ahead and dive in with the noon game, the Staff DNA Cure Bowl. So in this Cure Bowl, we have two teams that are coming off of winning their Group of 5 conference. We've got the Ohio Bobcats and the Jacksonville State Gamecocks. This is honestly like one of the better matchups on paper from a non-CFP game, in my opinion. Like, these two teams are pretty equal on paper, but there's some variables in play that I do think are going to skew kind of the scales to one team as opposed to the other. So on paper, according to Vegas, Ohio is 4.5-point favorites in this game with a game total of 56.5 points. That is the highest on this three-game slate. That means the implied total is about 30-26 in favor of Ohio. All three teams on this slate that are implied to win or projected to win by Vegas, or favored to win by Vegas, however you want to word it, all three of them are implied to score about 30 points. So really, the difference in the totals is going to impact more so the losing teams as opposed to the winning teams. I think personally that this Ohio team is going to win this game. Both of these teams are dealing with their head coach being gone. Ohio's coach, Tim Albin, has left to my alma mater, the Charlotte 49ers. I'm really excited about that. I think the dude is a winner, and I'm really looking forward to him taking over that program. And Jacksonville State, Rich Rodriguez is back at West Virginia, so he is gone as well. But how the two teams have responded to it has been much different. Ohio has had pretty much nobody that played enter the transfer portal, whereas Jacksonville State has had multiple starters enter. They don't seem to be as cohesive and as determined to end this season on a right note as the Ohio team is. And objectively, I think that Jacksonville State is by far the worst defense on this slate. I think you've got 6 pretty good defenses on this Friday slate. Jacksonville defense is not one, though. They were one of the better defenses in Conference USA, but that's really like a no defense conference. There were a lot of shootouts in that conference this year. Jacksonville State gives up about 170 rushing yards a game, which ranks 91st in the nation, and they give about 215 passing yards a game, which ranks 58th in the nation. But both of those are like two of the worst totals on this slate. And Ohio is a team that is going to look to win by running. So it's a good matchup for them with Jacksonville State having a bad run defense. Ohio ranks 10th in the nation in rush rate. And when you consider that three of the teams ahead of them are the service academies, that's only 6 other teams that run the ball at a higher rate than Ohio. Now, for Ohio, one way that they will run the ball is with their quarterback, Parker Navarro. It is what gives him probably the highest ceiling of any quarterback on this slate from a DraftKings perspective. I think of all the quarterbacks on the slate, he is by far the top play. Like, if you were just to ask me, hey, Mike, what quarterback is going to score the most points on this slate, I would tell you Parker Navarro. In his last 4 games, he's been over 29 DraftKings points in all of them, and those have been against some decent defenses. Like, I don't think the Miami, Ohio defense is all that bad. He put up 36 DraftKings points against them. The Toledo defense is pretty good. He put up 29 DraftKings points against him. So with his running and his passing upside, Parker Navarro, clearly the top quarterback on the slate, in my opinion. At the running back position, we've got Anthony Tyus, who has turned into the workhorse running back for Ohio. In 2 of the last 3 games, he's been over 27 rushing attempts, and he's been over 21 DraftKings points in both of those games. And even in the other game, he still got to 100 yards. He still got to 16 DraftKings points on 13 carries. So this is a guy who is getting a lot of touches, is efficient with his touches, and is on a team that loves to run the football in a matchup where the team is going to be able to run the football. I really think that a Navarro and Tyus stack makes a lot of sense on this slate. I think if you're not playing Navarro, I think you really want to play Tyus, or maybe if you are playing Navarro, maybe you don't play Tyus. I don't know. I think that with this Ohio team, the way they like to run the football, I like the idea of getting both of the pieces of this run game, Navarro and Tyus. Personally, I think this is a really bad slate for the wide receiver position anyway. So if you're going to be playing 3 running backs, then I think it makes a lot of sense to play Tyus as one of those. I think objectively, he's certainly one of the top 3 running back plays on the slate. If you're looking to get a little bit different, Nolan McCormick did have 2 carries in the last game against Miami, Ohio, and Ricky Hunt Jr. had 1. Like, they're there, but it's very clear that when this team wants to win, Anthony Tyus is the guy they're going to give the ball to. If you were playing a ton of lineups, maybe you could sprinkle in McCormick or Hunt because we know that this team's going to run the football. Maybe with it being a bowl, they might try to mix some guys in, but I just don't see that. I really think this is Tyus' show. At the wide receiver position, Ohio does make this easy. They only throw to one guy, and that's Coleman Owen. In the Ball State game, he did catch 5 for 73 and a touchdown. He was the leading target getter with 9 targets, 18 DraftKings points in that game. We've seen him have 3 games this season of 34 DraftKings points or more. Super high ceiling. If you're going to be playing Parker Navarro and you don't want to play Tyus at running back, I think you really want to stack him with Coleman Owen, because if you're playing Navarro and you're not playing Tyus, what you're saying is that this Ohio team is going to score by either Navarro rushing touchdowns or by Navarro passing touchdowns. And so if Navarro is going to be passing the ball for touchdowns, Coleman Owen is the likely beneficiary. In terms of other guys that play for them, Chase Hendricks is a guy that's going to be out there every snap. He had 7 catches for 61 yards against Miami, Ohio. Didn't score a touchdown, so it was only 13 DraftKings points, but he's very clearly this team's wide receiver too. And I got to be honest, I really wouldn't consider anybody after him. Like, Rodney Harris is an every down player, but he doesn't get the ball a whole lot. I would really personally just be sticking to Owen and Hendricks here on this slate. Now, on the Jacksonville State side, they do have their starting quarterback playing in this game, Tyler Huff. He is another very mobile quarterback. And the Ohio defense, though, that's what concerns me. Tyler Huff's been great this season, but the Ohio defense is really, really good. They rank 5th in the nation in rushing yards allowed per game, and they rank 45th in the nation in passing yards allowed per game. And overall, 8th in the nation in yards allowed per game. Like, this is a really good defense, and it's probably a really bad matchup for Huff. Like, I can't look at the schedule and identify a defense that's as good as this one. I mean, honestly, like the Louisville defense, maybe. Like, Jacksonville State got boat raced in that game, but Huff still put up 28 DraftKings points. So I don't know. I think that Huff, I would personally have him behind Parker Navarro. I would have him behind Riley Leonard because of the matchup. But he's certainly a guy that I'm not going to be excluding from my player pool because of what he does bring from the rushing upside and just his ability to rack up fancy points that way. At the running back position, they've also got a workhorse running back, Trey Stewart. He's been over 20 carries in every game since week 4. Not enough can be said about just how much this team looks to give him the football and how much touchdown equity this guy has. He scored 24 total touchdowns this season. If you think that Jacksonville State is going to put up a lot of points in this game, I would assume that it's going to come with Trey Stewart rushing for touchdowns because it's simply what he does. And so he's a guy that, again, like Tyler Huff, I don't like the matchup, but he's going to make my player pool. And I don't mind the idea of stacking this game and getting both sides of Ohio and Jacksonville State. This is the game with the highest total on the slate. You've also got a few backups that do see some run for this Jacksonville State backfield. Andrew Paul had 5 carries in their last game against Western Kentucky. Anwar Lewis has been pretty much out of the game plan since week 12, but he was a guy that was a part of it in the middle of the season. Mike Franklin is a guy that has been way out of the game plan. And then Ron Wiggins is a guy that saw carries against Western Kentucky in week 14, but didn't see any last week. So really, you're just looking at Stewart and Paul in this backfield. At the wide receiver position, Cam Vaughn has transferred, or is in the portal, excuse me. He's still apparently dressing, though. He's listed as a backup on their official depth chart. It's very weird. But he's their number 1 receiver. He's been their number 1 receiver all season. And I don't know why he would dress if he's going to be a backup. I don't know, man. Like, this bowl season, like it just gets crazier and crazier every year with the transfer portal and guys opting out and not opting out. And then you end up with situations like on Wednesday night where Ricky White doesn't play for UNLV for apparently no reason. And it was announced like right before kickoff. It's just, bowl season's weird, man. Like nothing would shock me with Cam Vaughn, but I'm certainly building my lineups as if he is not playing. The guy that I'm interested in because of him not playing is PJ Wells. PJ Wells is the guy that is listed in Cam Vaughn's spot. He was a guy that was productive for Jacksonville State last season from the wide receiver position. So $4,500 I think is a reasonable price to pay. But again, this is a team that's going to see a ton of rushing volume. Right? Like they rank 4th in the nation in rush rate, Jacksonville State does. So they're literally behind only the service academies in rush rate. And so you're just not going to get a lot of passing volume out of this offense. It makes targeting these receivers really not a great move, but PJ Wells would be the guy that I would be looking for. Michael Petaway is also a guy that is an every down player, is pretty much caught a pass in every game, but never really like has a big game. But he's a guy that's out there, and if they're going to be throwing the ball, they're probably going to throw a few his way. But like I said, Wells is probably my main target in this passing offense. All right, game number 2, we have got the Union Home Mortgage Gasparilla Bowl, which I learned looking it up that a Gasparilla is just something associated with pirates and associated with the city of Tampa. I don't know why they named a bowl after it. I don't know if, that's a big thing in Tampa that they know what a Gasparilla is. I was not aware. But anyway, we've got the Gasparilla Bowl. And in this one, we've got Tulane taking on Florida. Florida is 10.5-point favorites with a game total of 49.5 points. That is the lowest on the slate, meaning the implied total is about 30-20 in favor of the Gators. This is one where these two teams have kind of had opposite seasons. What I mean by that is Tulane is like the ultimate bottom feeder. Their best games have come against really poor competition and really weak scheduling. And when they played better competition, they've really struggled. Florida is a team that has played the best of the best schedules out of anybody, right? Like in the non-conference, they played Miami and Florida State and UCF, and in conference, they had one of the most brutal SEC schedules imaginable. And the fact that they are here is a testament to the fact that this team's actually pretty good. Like I really think Florida is going to roll Tulane because I think these two teams are headed in opposite directions. And Tulane also has a lot more guys in the portal than Florida does. Multiple starters on the defensive line for Tulane are in the portal. Now, let's take a look at this Tulane side. So first off, let's talk about the Florida defense, though. Florida's defense has been pretty good considering their schedule. They rank 184th in rushing yards per game. They rank 84th in rushing yards per game, giving up 165. That is their weakness. In terms of passing yards per game, they gave up 244, which ranks 98th. But again, they've done that against a really tough schedule. Tulane is a team that is going to be looking to run the football. They rank 8th in the nation in rush rate, and I think that's going to be even higher this game. So their normal starting quarterback, Darian Mensah, is already in the portal and is already committed to Duke, so he's gone. Ty Thompson was first to enter the portal, and then the third-string quarterback, Kai Horton, also entered the portal. But basically what ended up happening was once all three of them were in the portal, Ty Thompson kind of came back and said, hey, I'm going to play in the bowl game. And so they're starting Ty Thompson in the bowl game. Please don't get mad at me if this is wrong, but I believe he is an Oklahoma transfer, so he is talented. This is a guy that they would bring in kind of as like a wildcat quarterback in like a lot of games this season just to run. So I do expect him to be a runner. I do expect him to have a lot of running opportunities. I don't expect there to be a whole lot of passing volume. He's the cheapest starting quarterback on this slate at $5,000, but I do believe the rushing upside makes him playable if you are looking for a cheap quarterback. At the running back position, the good news is that Tulane pretty much only runs one guy, and that is Mekhi Hughes. He is probably their best overall all-around football player. Just a great running back, workhorse. The Florida defense, this has been their weakness, but I expect them to be pretty good against an American Athletic offensive line. 7,900 is a lot to swallow for Hughes. If I'm being totally honest, I would rather pay up an extra $1,000 for Trey Stewart or pay down to Jeremiah Love or Anthony Tyus than play Mekhi Hughes. But hey, I think a lot of people are going to feel that way. So in DFS, we talk about all the time how sometimes a bad play becomes a good play when nobody plays them. And the guy happens to go off. So maybe, just maybe, Mekhi Hughes could go off in this game. At the wide receiver position, this is another position where the Tulane offense has been pretty condensed. Mario Williams, the USC transfer, has very clearly been their number one wide receiver. In the last 2 games combined, he's got 13 catches for 239 yards and 2 touchdowns, over 25 DraftKings points in both those games. Again, the Florida defense on paper, the stats don't line up to be that great, but this is one of the weaker offenses that Florida's played. If Tulane goes down, which has happened in the last 2 games, then you're going to see more passing volume, and I think that does bode well for Mario Williams. So to me, that would kind of be the way I play it. Is I would want to play Mario Williams when I'm playing some Florida guys on the other side, because I would anticipate Florida going ahead and then Mario Williams, kind of getting more work when they're down. Like, just look at his game log. He's had much better games when Tulane has lost as opposed to when Tulane has won. It's kind of weird, but it's just how it's worked out because they're seeing more passing volume that way. So that would be the way I would target Mario Williams. Their second receiver is Dante Fleming. He's been kind of just lately. Hasn't been over 8 DraftKings points in his last 5 games, but he is out there as an every down player in this offense. And then Keith Brown is another guy who's out there as an every down player. He's been a little better than Dante Fleming lately. And then they've got the tight end Alex Ballman, who's, again, pretty much an every down player. They play a lot of 11 personnel. And so I would really be having Williams way ahead as a 1A in this receiving room, but the uncertainty of knowing that it is another quarterback playing Ty Thompson, it would not shock me if Fleming or Brown or Bowman had a big game, just if they have more familiarity with the quarterback, which there's no way of really knowing that unless you're literally at Tulane practice every day. So I'm definitely having Mario Williams as my wide receiver 1, but again, I'm probably playing him in lineups where he's either stacked with Ty Thompson or where I'm playing Florida guys on the other side. So how can we play Florida guys on the other side? Well, DJ Lagway is Florida's quarterback, and he's been pretty solid. Like, I've been impressed with him every time I've watched him. The Tulane defense is pretty good, though, but again, they've done it against bad teams. When they play good teams, they get scored on. But overall, the Tulane defense ranks 52nd in the nation in rushing yards allowed per game and 8th in the nation in passing yards allowed per game. So they are a little bit of a run funnel. But I don't think that means necessarily that you can't play Lagway. I mean, I think he's going to relish the opportunity to go up against kind of like group of 5 competition and have it be a little bit easier out there for him than playing the brutal SEC schedule that this team played. So Lagway sitting there at 5,300 is certainly going to make my player pool, but I don't I guess I got to kind of give you guys the goods here and say whether I would play Lagway or Thompson. I think I'm probably going to have more lineups with Thompson at 5,000 than Lagway at 5,300, but I do think the Lagway is a decent play. At the running back position, it has turned into a full-blown committee for Florida. Montreal Johnson Jr. was their guy at the start of the season. Against Mississippi, he did have 18 carries. He was great in that game. Against FSU, he had 10 carries, but they're giving other guys carries. Jaden Ball had 11 in that game against FSU, out-carrying Johnson by 1. And then Jacoby Jackson had 10 carries in that game against FSU, equaling him. So this is a team that is going to run all 3 guys. I will be playing shares of all 3 guys. If I had to pick one, I would probably go Jaden Ball, just because they seem the most committed to giving him volume. I just think that when you take the price tag into account that he's only $3,700, I think that's a pretty solid play. The wide receiver position with Eugene Wilson III being out, the only downside for this Florida team is that they have been not having a lot of passing volume lately. But when they've passed, they pretty much passed to 2 guys. It's been Elijah Badger or it's been Shamir Deek. And those 2 guys are pretty much the only 2 that I would consider from this Florida wide receiver room. What you would be hoping for, and both of these guys have done this over the course of the season, what you would be hoping for is just a random big volume game from one of them, or just break off a big play for a few of them. With as ugly as this wide receiver position on this slate is as a whole, I think they're pretty solid options at 5,600 to 5,000 though. Like really, when you look at the guys priced around them, I think they're pretty good. And so I'm certainly going to be having a little bit of Badger and a little bit of Deke. All right, that does it for the first 2 games. Let's go ahead and take a quick breather, and then let's talk about the main course of the college football playoff between Indiana and Notre Dame. All right, before we continue, I do want to mention there are places where you can get more information from me. First off, you can follow me on Twitter at Mike's Money Picks. I'm more than happy to answer any questions if you reach out to me on Twitter. I also tweet out all updates for the show as well. Secondly, I'm also in the Fantasy Corner Discord. The link is in the description for both the YouTube video and the audio episode for the Fantasy Corner Discord. It is a community of a lot of DFS players, really smart, really good people that just are always in there talking lineups, talking plays, and it's entirely free. So if you're just looking for people to talk DFS with, it's a great place to go. The College Football DFS chat in there is always jumping. Got a lot of really smart people in there. And I just cannot recommend enough if you're looking to join a community of DFS players. Also, I do write an article for my Patreon every single College Football DFS slate where I profile my core plays as well as why they are my core plays. So you can get some information from somebody who understands the X's and O's of college football and understands the game theory of DFS. I can't just promise that you're going to instantly plug in those plays and win thousands of dollars. It's not that easy. Anybody who promises that is lying to you. But what I can promise is that you can get information from somebody who knows what they're doing and can help you improve your game. All right, so let's go ahead and get to the last game, though. The one that we've been waiting for, right? Indiana at Notre Dame in round 1 of the college football playoff. This one, Vegas has Notre Dame as 7.5-point favorites with a game total of 52.5 points, meaning the implied total is about 30 to 23 in favor of the Irish. Look, I am not going to bury the lead here. I think Notre Dame is going to boat race Indiana. I don't think this game is going to be close. I think Notre Dame is going to beat the brakes off of them. I don't expect this game to be close. And Indiana, congrats, you had a great season, but I think they drew a bad matchup in round one of the college football playoff. I think Notre Dame, in a season where I don't think there's a truly dominant team, and I really question whether or not each and every team is good every time I watch them, Notre Dame, ever since the Northern Illinois game, has been straight up dominant. They have finished teams off in the first half. They have not left any games to chance. They have just utterly beaten down every team that they've played, and they've done it their way. They have an identity, and they're good at what they do. And I really worry about this Indiana team. Indiana has only played one team that I would consider good this season, and it was Ohio State, and they lost that game 38-15. And in that game, here's what is really important, and I've been banging the drum for this. I've been telling everybody who will listen to me. Indiana scored on their first drive of the game in that game. They didn't score again until garbage time. Why does that matter? Because college football offensive coaches like to script as many plays possible to start a game. Some coaches will script an entire first drive. Some coaches will script 10 plays, 15 plays, whatever. What scoring on the first drive tells you for any team is that the coaches came up with a good game plan. They had the right ideas for what to do against the other team's defense, and they executed, and they went out and scored. That's what Indiana did against Ohio State. What not scoring after that tells me is that as soon as Ohio State started adjusting to what Indiana did, Indiana had no answers, and they were not able to score again until garbage time. And I think that Notre Dame is probably going to do the same thing. I think Indiana is going to score enough early to keep the game close, so that way Notre Dame's starters will stay in, and it'll be probably what I anticipate is like a 34-17 Notre Dame win. That's what I'm anticipating. I don't think it's ever going to be in doubt. I think Indiana will score a few times in the first half, but Notre Dame will be in control of the game throughout. Right? So I'm going to be kind of playing my lineups based off of that thought. So let's go ahead and talk about the Indiana side. So Curtis Rourke is Indiana's quarterback. And again, with them playing such a weak schedule, I really only want to look at what he did against good defenses, right? And even defenses that I wouldn't consider all that great, he kind of struggled from a DraftKings perspective. Against Nebraska, he only had 11 DraftKings points. Against Michigan, he had 12. Against Ohio State, he had 0.42. So at a price tag of $7,300, I have a tough time convincing myself to play Curtis Rourke when you've got DJ Lagway and Ty Thompson significantly cheaper with much better matchups. That's just how I see it. Now, if you want to play devil's advocate here, I think the situation I would play Curtis Rourke in is in a full-on game stack of this game, because I think if he were to be at his best, it would need to be like a pinball back and forth type of game. I don't think that's a likely outcome, but I think that that's an angle that you could play in DFS with Curtis Rourke in your lineup that could be successful. The running back position, Indiana has a committee, which is not what we want. We've got Justice Ellison at $5,200. Wake Forest transfer. He is the leader of the committee. He is the best one in the committee. But you've also got two JMU transfers, Tyson Lawton and Kaylon Black. Lawton has been pretty effective in the last two games. He scored 3 total touchdowns in those 2 games. In fact, he scored both of Indiana's touchdowns against Ohio State. Maybe there's something there to that. And then Kaylon Black is also pretty involved as well. He had 7 carries against Purdue last week. But basically, with it being a committee, and Notre Dame having a really good run defense, I'm just not all that intrigued in playing these guys. If I were to play one of them, it'd probably be Lawton, because maybe there is something to the fact that he scored twice against Ohio State. Like maybe against better defenses, they trust him a little bit more. He did have 15 for 79 in that game, whereas Justice Ellison had 17 for 62. So maybe there's something there. Maybe there's not, but I'm not going to be playing a lot of Indiana running backs. At the wide receiver position, Indiana does have a clear wide receiver one. It is JMU transfer Elijah Surratt. But again, look at what he's done against good defenses. Against Ohio State, 3 for 40. Against Michigan, 1 for 36, but it was a touchdown, so he did get 10.6 DraftKings points. Against Washington, 2.2. Like, he's struggled against good defenses. Now, the one thing I will say for Surratt, though, if you watch Notre Dame play against USC, one thing USC did really well, and one way USC was able to move the ball on Notre Dame, was they really went after Notre Dame's second corner, Christian Gray. And if Indiana is smart about how they use their receivers, they could get Surratt matched up on Christian Gray if they want to. And I do think that there's a little bit of an angle there that maybe Surratt could have a big game if they're able to do that, right? But here's the other problem in Indiana. They play a massive rotation of receivers after him. Omar Cooper II has been a guy that he's been over double-digit fantasy points in 4 of his last 5. Keyshawn Williams is another Wake Forest transfer. He's been pretty good, over 13 DraftKings points in 3 of his last 4. He would probably be the cheap Indiana receiver that I would want to play. Then you've also got Miles Price, who plays a pretty solid role. Ohio transfer Miles Cross, who plays a pretty solid role, even though he's been pretty quiet lately. So I would probably rank them Surratt and then Williams. But like I said, I'm not playing a whole lot of pieces from this Indiana side. Let's talk about the Notre Dame side now. So Riley Leonard is a quarterback much in the same mold of Tyler Huff and Parker Navarro in the early game, where he derives a lot of his points from running the football. And in games where they've kind of blown out people, he hasn't had as much like running because they just don't want to put wear and tear on him. In the closer games, he's had a lot of success running. And really, even in some of the blowouts, he's been pretty good because he gets touchdowns, right? So I think that you can play him in any type of game environment, any type of like build you're looking for. I think he's a really solid play. The only thing that really kind of talks me out of him is the fact that he's all the way up at $9,400. I would rather play Navarro at $8,800 than Leonard at $9,400. But I do think that I would have Leonard ranked ahead of Tyler Huff when cost is considered. And I do think that there's enough value at the running back and wide receiver positions that you can play Leonard and Navarro or Leonard and Huff. So I'm definitely going to be getting a lot of Leonard lineups. The running back position, Notre Dame has kind of got a two-headed monster, but it's a different way than you would expect. So Jeremiah Love is the running back 1 for Notre Dame. He's great. He's going to play on Sunday. He's going to have a long NFL career. He's really athletic. He's big. He's fast. He's everything you would want in a running back. He scored a touchdown in every single game so far this season. It's exactly what you want in a DraftKings running back, right? They typically don't give him huge carry amounts, though, but he typically doesn't need it because he usually breaks off a long run, usually for a touchdown, and he's involved in the passing game as well. I think he's a great play at $7,500. Jadarian Price is kind of the spellback for Jeremiah Love. He came in against USC and had his biggest game of the season, 21 DraftKings points. But you look at some of the other games where Jeremiah Price has been good. He's been really good in like big Notre Dame wins. In the Army game, he had 2 touchdowns, 17 DraftKings points. In the FSU game, he had 15 DraftKings points. We've been banging the drum for Price like for a while now because when Notre Dame is up, they will lean on Price as opposed to Love. He's a little bit of a bigger body. He's a little more durable, and you don't get tread on the tires of Jeremiah Love when you run Jadarian Price. So Jadarian Price is a guy that's going to make my player pool, but I really hate the fact that they bumped him up at $5,300 because we were playing him at $3,300 a few weeks ago. So he is a guy that I'm going to play, but I'm probably going to play more Love than Price because, like I said earlier, I do think that Indiana keeps this game close for a while, but I think that Notre Dame is going to be able to pull it out by a few possessions. The wide receiver position, I would not blame you if you didn't play a single wide receiver for Notre Dame. I just, like all season long, they just haven't been great, right? Like Bo Collins, the Clemson transfer, is kind of like their jump ball physical guy. He tends to win against man coverage. So maybe there's something there at $3,500. Jaden Grayhouse was a big-time recruit coming in. He's $3,400 on DraftKings. Chris Mitchell, the FIU transfer, I continue to say if they want to really unlock this passing offense, it's going to have to come with getting him some big plays. He's $3,200. The guy that I would play, the only guy that I'm considering playing, really, I mean, maybe I'll get the Bo Collins in a few lineups, but the main guy I'm considering playing is Mitchell Evans at $3,100. He's the starting tight end for Notre Dame. This guy, when he was healthy in 2023, was like a $5,000, $6,000 player on DraftKings, and right now he's $3,100. He's been hurt most of the year, playing hurt. He's now back to being Mitchell Evans. Against USC, 5 for 59 and a touchdown. Against Virginia, 4 for 34 and a touchdown. FSU, 2 for 21 and a touchdown. Like, he's back to having the role that he had last year. And so $3,100 for that guy, I'm absolutely willing to pay for it. And he clears up a lot of salary if you do play him. Like, he enables you to play the 2 expensive quarterbacks and the expensive running backs if you're able to play a guy like Mitchell Evans at receiver. So he's a guy that is going to be in a lot of my lineups, if I'm being honest. Which, let's go ahead and try a sample build here, right? So let's say I go Leonard. And let's say as my second quarterback, I go Navarro. Now, I know that I have them in the wrong spots, but just bear with me here. So that gives me an average remaining of $5,300. If I want to go Anthony Tyus, That gives me $5,200 remaining. And then if I go all the way down and I get Mitchell Evans at the receiver position, even though he's a tight end, that brings me back up to $5,700. That brings me a ton of like options to finishing my lineup. Like I can go get an expensive running back like a Stewart or a Love. You know, I can go to receiver and I can get a Coleman Owen if I want to. I can get, you know, I can pretty much play who I want from here. So I really think that that's, you know, that's something I'm going to be tinkering around with, is seeing how I can get to those two expensive quarterbacks with Mitchell Evans as a little bit of a salary saver. But that's just what I'm looking at right now. I haven't finalized anything yet. So anyway, if you do want to know who actually makes my lineups, who actually makes my core, head on over to the Patreon, patreon.com/Mike'sMoneyPicks. But that's going to do it for this episode, y'all. Like I said, you know, breaking down all three games, hopefully gave you guys plenty of information that you can use in order to build some winning DFS lineups here for this Friday night slate. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel, because literally once this finishes uploading, we are going to be back recording for the Saturday slate, which is all three college football playoff games, which includes my Texas Longhorns. So I'm really excited about it. So anyway, best of luck to you guys on the Friday slate. Come back for the Saturday slate. Thank you guys for watching and listening to this point, and I'll see you guys next time.